Alright guys, so welcome to today's tutorial video right here. In today's tutorial video, we will deal with this Logia kit right here, alright? And I'm going to try out a new approach when it comes to explaining you how this stuff works, alright? So before, on my previous videos, you have always seen me create everything from scratch, alright? And due to a very low watch time, alright? So we had 1 hour videos with 1 minute watch time, alright? And that's embarrassing, I'm honest with you. But due to that fact, I've decided to try out this way, and let's see if this works, alright? Let's see if we can, increase your attention span with these videos now. Alright, so we will start off with this quick chart right here explaining to you how this Logia kit works, alright? So let's begin with you, okay? You is, of course, your player, right? So we have a local script, but you will see that soon as well. We have a local script which basically detects when someone is nearby you, alright? And by nearby you, I mean that we are checking for the distances in between you and other players, but also other dummies, alright? So we are not using that touched event in order to recognize whether it is time to apply that Logia effect or not, but we're using magnitude and distances and whatsoever, alright? So this local script is basically checking for the distances, and if someone is nearby, then we want to do that Logia effect, alright? But before we actually do that Logia effect, so we are doing that Logia effect via client, alright? But before we do that, we really want to verify if the distances are correct, because exploiters can possibly spoof those distances and can literally just trigger this effect without having any players nearby. Therefore, I have set up a remote event which we are fire serving, alright? So this is what this arrow means. So we fire serve this remote event, and this will lead to a reaction of the server script. And this server script is going to verify the distances, so whether the player is really nearby the enemy, or another player. And if that's the case, then the server script right here is going to fire all clients. This is basically what this arrow means. And yeah, basically fire all clients will lead to the creation of this Logia effect on all of the clients. And this is basically how this Logia effect works, alright? So this is the chart. I hope that this was understandable, and we will now switch over to Roblox Studio, and we will now go into detail. Alright, so here we are in Roblox Studio. Let's go inside of this local script. And yeah, so this is this local script I was talking about, which is basically checking for distances. Now let's explain, or let's start off with those variables right here. So M basically stands for module, and I have created a module script right here, which is going to be responsible for creating all of these Logia effects, alright? But we will deal with this later on. And we basically require this local script by referring to it inside of those brackets, alright? And requiring this module script makes us able to use its function called create effect, which is also inside of here, alright? But that's topic for soon. Now, yeah, we have another variable called doing Logia. This is some kind of cooldown, let's say, because we do not want to spam those Logia effects. And the third variable is our remote event right here, which basically establishes the communication between client and server, alright? So as we are able to see in a chart. Now we have this wait right here. I've added this wait because otherwise we will just receive some errors. Because our local script right here loads faster than our character does, apparently. Therefore, we need to add some kind of wait right here. You could possibly do character edit wait as well, and or just decrease 10 to 5 or 3. So you just have to test this out, alright? But I think that 10 is way too much. We could really decrease this to 5 if we want to. Now, before we move on with this one, I would like to move on with these ones, alright? Because we want to do everything in a row, alright? So how it work in practice, alright? So let's start off with these two, alright? So what we're doing right here is that we are looping through the players tab, alright? So we have this players tab, and this one fills with players when someone joins, and when someone leaves, a player is being removed, whatsoever, alright? So all of our players inside of our server are contained inside of here, and we are now looping through this tab. Now, we want to verify whether the player we are currently at is not our player. Why is that important? Because we are now making use of a function called check for distance, and we will discuss this later on, alright? The only thing which you need to know is that this function basically checks for a distance in between your character and the character which is added inside of Fia. And in this case, we have added the player's character. So, and by player, I mean the player which we are currently at, because we are looping, alright? So not our character, but the character which we are currently at inside of this loop. Therefore, it is important that we exclude that the player we are currently at inside of the loop is not our character, because there is no point in comparing distances between our character and our character again, alright? So that's the reason why we have to exclude our player from this loop right here. Now, as I've told you, we apply this function and then we move on with this part right here, alright? Because we also want our Logia effect to be triggered not only by other players, but also by dummies, NPCs, whatsoever, okay? So that's the reason why we have the second loop right here. And in this case, we're now looping through the workspace via get descendants, alright? And get descendants is not like get children, which only would take all of these, but get descendants really gets all of these, this, no, not this, but you guys understand what I'm trying to tell you, alright? So this and everything inside of here as well, everything inside of here as well, and so on, alright? So it literally gets anything which is inside of the workspace, alright? That's the advantage of using this. Now, why do we want to do this? So we want to skim through the workspace, hoping to find a character model, alright? Let me explain you what kind of character model we are looking for. So V stands for the instance we are currently at, because this is a loop, and we are basically checking whether V is a model, alright? That's one characteristics of a character model, that it is a model, obviously. Second requirement is that it contains a humanoid inside of it. Makes sense as well. And the third one does not necessarily have to do with the characteristics of a character model, but moreover with whether this character model, because those two are the main characteristics, whether this character model does not belong to us. And we can check that by taking the instance's name, so this character model's name, and looking for this name inside of this players tab. And if it does not exist, then we are sure that this character model does not belong to our player, or also not to other players. That's important as well. So the problem which could possibly occur when we do not have this third requirement right here is that we also not only refer to NPCs, dummies, whatsoever, but also to our player's character model, which we have already checked for up here, you know? So we do not want to double this stuff. Therefore we have to exclude that this character model does not belong to a player. And as I've told you, we do that by entering the name of this character model inside of this player's tab and looking out for a player which has the same name. And if there is a player, then this third requirement isn't met, alright? Because this third requirement wants no player to be inside of there which has the same name as this character. I hope that this was clear, alright? And if all of those requirements are met, we are basically putting B, which is the character model, inside of this check for distance function, alright? Now let's start off with this function. So how does this function work? So it requires a character model, alright? Doesn't matter if it is a NPC dummy or a player's character model, as up here. Now, I finally, acquired the knowledge about coroutines. So, coroutine resume, coroutine create functions. So, we are basically resuming a coroutine which is being created inside of this resume function, alright? So, this might seem a little bit complicated, but it is not. Yeah, this basically ensures that this code, so this while loop runs in the background, alright, and does not interrupt the rest of the script. Now, how does this work? So we have this loop, and this loop doesn't end, alright? So that's one important thing you have to know about. Second thing is that we have added a wait, and this wait makes sure that this loop does not crash, alright? Otherwise, this loop would crash the client because it doesn't end, and this run for infinite. Okay. Now, next thing which happens right here is that we are having some if statements. All right. So this first if statement makes sure that the character which we have passed into this function, so that the distance of its humanoid root part, so of this character's humanoid root part and our humanoid root part, is not greater than 5 studs, alright? So you can increase this number or decrease it. I do not recommend you to increase this number, otherwise the Logia effect is triggered even when you're not touching the enemy, alright? So I would recommend you to decrease this if you want to, but do not increase it, alright? Second argument is whether this doing Logia variable is false. As I've told you, this is supposed to be some kind of cooldown, so if this is false, then this is going to be set to true down here. Means that this check will fail automatically when it comes to the next loop, alright? Now, down here, when all of those two requirements are met, we are fire servering this remote event right here, alright? To verify the distance which has been checked upon right here. Because as I've told you, exploiters can spoof this, so this is no challenge for an exploiter, alright? Therefore, we have to verify this distance on the server as well, to really make sure that this distance right here is correct. Alright? But we will get onto this later on. Now wait. Wait. I'm sorry. I've done a mistake. Forget about this for a moment. Wait. Yeah, I'm sorry. Forget about this one. I have explained complete bullshit. So, yeah, that one was still some kind of you know, some kind of line while I was creating this whole thing. All right, so it doesn't even have to do with all of these. So just forget about it. All right. Yeah. So we have set up a table right here. Okay, and this table is empty at the beginning, but we will now fill this table with all of the possible body parts which can possibly be affected by this Logia. Alright, and the best thing about this Logia effect kit right here is that not only your body parts such as your right arm, left arm, upper torso, lower torso, whatsoever are only affected, but also your hats, your hair, your cape, your other accessories, alright, so all of them are affected, alright, so that's something I've barely seen in in any Logia effect yet, alright, but I used to play Roblox several years ago, so I barely play anything, alright, so do not blame me if newer games have that feature. Yeah. So this empty table right here, which is supposed to store all of the body parts, is now being filled inside of those lines. So what happens right here? We are now looping through the character, so our character, that's important, our character. And we do that via get descendant, so I've already explained what this is about. And we are making sure that the port we are currently at is either a mesh port or part. And the next line right here ensures that we do not target the humanoid's root port. And let me explain you why. Because this humanoid root port right here, it is our root port, and it is always transparent. All right, so we do not want this to, you know, turn to transparent, to visible, and to adapt to any colors, particles whatsoever. We want this to stay transparent, and that's fine, alright? And if all of those requirements are met, we are filling up this table, so we are referring to this table, and then we are indexing basically the total amount of entries inside of here plus 1. And by indexing the spot, we are telling, yeah, okay, so this index refers to this body part, alright? So this part, right, especially this part, might be complicated, but let me try to explain this to you. So hashtag body parts gets the total amount of entries inside of here. Now, if we play this through, there is no entry inside of here, means the total amount is 0, alright? Now, down here, we basically have 0 plus 1. Okay, 0 plus 1 refers to 1. So index 1 means first spot. The first spot of this table equals our body part. So whatever body part this might be, alright? Now, second playthrough, there is the first body part inside of here. It means the total amount is 1, alright? So hashtag body parts becomes 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Body parts 2. So the second entry of this table refers to the next body part, alright? And this goes on, alright? So I hope that this was understandable. Now, down here, we're now generating a random number of affected body parts, alright? And this is important for this Logia effect. Not so the body parts which are nearby the enemy aren't necessarily those ones which are affected, alright? So it's, to be quite frankly, is randomized which body parts are affected or not. But I had the fear that this might look very, very unrealistic, but it does not, trust me. So it still looks very realistic in my opinion, and it doesn't look very much different from the Logia effects you guys know, alright? So that people use a touched event and detect when one body part has touched another body part, and then that body part becomes Logia, you know. So it is not like that, but it still looks as good as that, in my opinion, alright? So we're now generating a random number right here from 1 to the total amount of entries, right? And keep in mind, this table at this point is now filled up with all of the possible body parts. Now, what we're doing right here is that we are looping from 1 to wherever the number of affected body parts might be. So either 3 are affected, 4 are affected, 5, 6, 7, or even 2, you know? So we cannot know that. And then this loop right here is going to happen according to what how much body parts right here are affected. And for each body part, we're now creating a new coroutine, and we have to do this, otherwise this loop will literally do everything single by single. Means it will fire server this one, then wait for a few seconds and then fire server it, and you know, so there's a short delay, and we can get rid of this delay by using a coroutine right here. Now we are now fire servering this remote event with verified distance, alright? So we are now verifying the distance of this enemy right here, of this potential enemy, so of this character. But apart from that, we are also adding a body part, or a random body part, inside of here, alright? Let me explain you how this works. So this table right here, it fills up with body parts, alright? So instead of having 1 equals body part, you basically only have the body part inside of here, alright? And this body part now can be accessed by referring to this table and then indexing a random number, alright, which goes from 1 to the total amount of entries inside of here, right? By doing so, we can index a random body part inside of here, and this is basically what happens right here. So a random body part is being passed via this fire server. Now, we have to switch over to this server script because this is where all the magic happens. So we are right here referring to this remote, and then on server event basically reacts to each fire server, and then we receive 4 arguments. The first one is player, so this should be obvious. We do not have to enter the player inside of here, but we still receive the player who has fire server, alright? Second one is what, which is basically this one. Third one is char, which is our character, our enemy's character right here. And the fourth one is our body part, alright? Now, if what is verified distance, then, alright, so pretty obvious as well. Then we are checking for the distances one more time, as we have did right here. And as I've already told you, we do this because we really want to make sure that this distance is correct. Because exploiters can spoof this one, that's no problem for them, but they cannot spoof this one. At least not that easily, alright? So there are probably some workarounds depending on other elements in your game, but that's a whole nother topic, alright? But as long as you keep those checks server-sided, you should be fine, okay? Now, down here, we are fire clienting every player, alright? With the task to do Logia. So we're now approaching to this code right here. So do Logia. Second argument is basically the performer of this Logia effect, okay? Which is basically the player who has fire server, alright? So player.character. The third argument is the body part which is affected, and then there follows a bunch of other variables which basically you know, go more into detail when it comes to this Logia effect. So what kind of color is this going to have? What kind of material? What kind of transparency, particles, and light? All right, and that's something I wanna point out as well when it comes to my Logia effect right here. So you can just easily edit this Logia effect by editing all of those arguments right here. Okay, so you can, if you want to have a mirror Logia effect, you can change this to really red if you want to. You can keep it neon if you want to. You can change the transparency by increasing it if you want to. And this one is about particles, so this one is important, alright? If you want to have particles inside of your Logia effect, then all you have to do is you have to put those particles inside of this folder, alright? You can even have multiple particles. Look, how cool is this? You can even have multiple ones. In those Logia effect videos, people only showed you how to have one particle at once, alright? But in my Logia effect, right, you can have multiple particles if you want. You just have to put them inside of this folder and that's it. And if you want no particles, then that's fine as well, because you can just delete this one, so this reference to this folder right here, and then put nil inside of here. This module script automatically checks whether the particles and the lights are there. If they're not there, then it will just skip it, alright? Now, last one is the light. So, yeah, it just refers to the light, okay, right here. So you can change the light if you want, and if you want no light, then just do the same as for Logia, just write null inside of here. Okay, that's basically how this fire client works, alright? And this is basically the point where the magic happens. This one is responsible to make the Logia effect appear to all clients, okay? Now, right here on client event, so you have to make sure that this script is inside of every player, okay? Either that, or make sure that this passage at least, or these passages, are inside of every player, okay? Because I know that there are players out there who are not supposed to be able to have the Logia effect, and on the other hand, there are players who are supposed to have the Logia effect, alright? So if you are someone who's not supposed to have it, then only have these parts right here inside of a local script. If you're someone who's supposed to have a Logia effect, then just keep the script as it is, alright? So, right here on client event, basically this is where the Logia effect is happening. So we're now creating the effect right here with all of those variables I've already explained to you, alright? So we're now approaching to this part right here, okay? Logia create effect. We have the character of the performer, the body part, and all of the other details right here. So let me quickly go through this and then I'm gonna end the video, okay? So what we have right here is that we are first of all checking whether this body part exists or not, alright? So I had the error that the body part apparently was sometimes nil. But I think that this was because I had this fire server up here without even knowing it, alright? So I've totally forgot about it. I think that we can even get rid of this part. Let's do that. Okay, then the only requirement is that there is no instance inside of this body part called previous color. And this is just to make sure that there is no Logia effect happening inside of this body part, because if there is already a Logia effect happening, then we do not want another Logia effect to be happening inside of that same part as well. That would mean that we would just stack all of the particles, you know, just create more lag, and without any good result, alright? Because the result is still the same, or even worse, because we have too much particles inside of there and too much light inside of there, alright? So we do not want Logia effects to be stacked. That's the reason why we have to make sure that there is no trace of a previous Logia effect which is still going on inside of that body part, and this trace is possibly this value right here, which I'll be explaining shortly right here. Okay, now what about this previous color value? So it is important that we somehow store the previous state of this body part, alright? And by previous state I mean things like the color, which happens right here, the material, and when this thing was a mesh part, the texture ID. And yeah, so all of these things are stored
inside of values. I know that you could do this in a variable as well, I think, and it would be even better because it would cause less lag, because, you know, instances such as a brick color value and a string value and another string value, they necessarily cause more drain to the performance than variables, at least I think so. But I've preferred this way because I wasn't sure whether this method with variables would work or not, because back then, so some years ago, I tried to do it via variables and it did not really work out as far as I can remember, but I could be wrong as well, alright? But I've just used those those values right here, okay? So previous color is a brick color value, which is inside of our body part, name is previous color, and the value of this brick color value is, you know, the color of the body part before this Logia effect happens. That's important. Same one goes for the material. We have a string value which is inside of the body part, which name is previous material, and which stores the material of the body part before transforming into the Logia. Now, this check right here is important because so what happens down here, first of all, is that we are storing the texture ID of a mesh part, alright? So why do we want to do that? Because, as I've told you, this Logia effect also makes your hair, your cape, your other accessory parts, so it makes them all adapt to the Logia, okay? And accessories usually have textures, okay? So they are mesh parts and they have a texture, okay? But there are also mesh parts which have no texture. And that's the reason why we need the second requirement right here, and why this requirement is not enough. Because otherwise, you would try to refer to a texture ID which is not there, okay? And that's a problem. So let me just give you a quick example. So you can see that this left lower arm is a mesh part, alright? But it has no texture ID. But if you take a look at your accessory, for example, when we would test this out, then your handle, which is a mesh part as well, has a texture ID, for example. Okay, that's the reason why we need those two requirements. So the first one, that this part is a mesh part, and that it has a texture ID, and that this texture ID field is not empty. And if that's the case, then we create another string value instead of that mesh part, instead of the body part whatsoever. We call it previous texture, and we set the value of this previous texture value to the texture ID of the body part before transforming. And then, in sake of this transformation, we make this texture ID field empty so that there is no texture upon this body part. Down here, we are setting the brick color of this body part to the desired color and the material to the desired material as well. Down here, we are checking whether this particle, alright, which we have passed right here, is not null. Okay, that's the point where this module script checks whether it is null or not. And if it is not null, then it is going to loop through this folder you have gave inside of this variable, and it is going to clone all of the particles and put them inside of the body part. And the same thing happens for the light. If light is not null, then it is going to clone it and put it inside of the body part. Okay, now down here we have a tween. And this tween right here, so what it does is that you have to imagine that you have a part, alright? And you have this part which is visible, and you want to make it invisible, okay? So invisible would mean transparency equals 1, visible means transparency equals 0, okay? Now, you could have two approaches to this. You could go ahead and then just suddenly change the transparency from 0 to 1, okay? This would work, and this would fulfill the purpose as well, but it would not look as fancy as if you would change the transparency slightly up to 1. So 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and so on, alright? And this is basically what the tween service does. So it creates this kind of transition, okay? And this tween service is dedicated to changing the transparency more fancy. So we put the body part as the instance we want to tween, and tween info is basically the settings you're setting up the tween with. The first argument right here is the wait time, which has to be fast, okay, therefore 0.25. Second argument is the easing style, which is going to be linear. Third one is going to be the direction, which is going to be out. So there is a whole dev hub entry, a whole dev hub article about the easing styles and the easing directions, so go ahead and check them out if you want to know more about them. Alright, this third argument right here is the goal. So the goal state you want to achieve, which is basically that the transparency of this body part is supposed to be the transparency which is you know wished for inside of this here. And we want to make that tween play, and after 0.5 seconds we are basically getting rid of everything. So we are restoring the previous brick color and the previous material right here.
Right here, we are once again checking whether the part is a mesh part and whether it contains this previous texture instance right here. If that's the case, then we want to override the texture ID, which is empty because of this Logia effect, with the value of this previous texture's value, alright? We are reverting the transparency as well down here, and we are now getting rid of all of these values. So previous color value, the previous material value, and if this thing was a mesh port and has the previous texture value inside of here, then we are getting rid of it as well. And then we are also looping through the body part itself to check for particles and for lights, and if they are there, then we want to destroy them. And this is basically it, guys. So this is how this Logia effect kit right here works, okay? So if you want to increase, I don't know, time in which the transparency fades, all you have to do is to increase this. If you want to change color, the transparency, the particles, you guys know what to do, okay? I've explained this now. That being said, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, share this video to all of your friends. Leave me feedback in the comment section, guys. Take care and see you in the next video.